On Saturday, owner Bob McNair met with a room full of football players incensed with him. McNair had drawn the righteous ire of Houston Texans players when it came to light, via ESPN's reporting, that he had referred to NFL players as inmates during an ownership meeting regarding protests during the national anthem. After 24 hours of upheaval, McNair gathered his team to address the comments. "I let them know that number one," McNair said later, "the last thing I want to be is a distraction. Distraction is a catchword among coaches and executives who run NFL teams, used in explanation or excuse for any number of actions. It's why Bill Belichick grumbles one-word answers in news conferences. It's why teams cut, or threaten to cut, players who voice a thought about something other than 3rd and 7. It's why, so many anonymous decision-makers said, teams refused to sign Colin Kaepernick. The next time a coach prattles about the necessity of avoiding distractions, remember late Sunday afternoon. The Texans endured a chaotic 48 hours after McNair's comments surfaced, and they scored 38 points and played one of the best games of the season in Seattle. The Dallas Cowboys again sweated the playing status of star running back Ezekiel Elliott, and they smashed the Redskins in Washington. NFL Week 8 Watson Electric, as Houston-Seattle play game of the year, most Texans kneel to protest owner. If any two teams would have been distracted Sunday, it was the Texans and Cowboys. If any two teams submitted a professional performance Sunday, it was the Texans and Cowboys. It's almost as if NFL football players, a group of men that has earned some of the most competitive careers in the country through years and years of grueling work, are able to compartmentalize external forces and the duties of their jobs. The people who run NFL teams are obsessed with the avoidance of so-called distraction. Football coaches tend to believe they can and should control everything, to a degree that bleeds into paranoia. They convince themselves anything other than film study, practice and driving to the facility will corrupt their teams. The D word has become so ingrained in football that The Onion has lampooned it. A search of Pro Football Talk brought up the following items considered to be distractions from this month alone: Cam Newton not speaking to the media, Martavis Bryant requesting a trade from the Steelers, DeShone Kizer having drinks at 1 a.m. the night before a game, Kaepernick potentially signing with the Packers, Marcus Peters yelling at the Chiefs' defensive coordinator, the Dolphins' offensive line coach snorting a white powder on camera, Antonio Brown throwing a sideline tantrum, and tension between players who stood and did not stand for the national anthem. It's not that players are immune to anything that happens off the field affecting them. NFL players are subject to the same pressures as the rest of us. Life sometimes interferes with job performance. But the pervasive idea that teams will fold under the weight of controversy, particularly controversy within the confines of football, has been proven to be preposterous. Teams and players that wilt under that kind of adversity were bound to fail in the first place. The Texans provided the best example. In the wake of ESPN's reporting, players nearly staged a wholesale walkout and DeAndre Hopkins skipped practice Friday. During the national anthem in Seattle before their exhilarating 41-38 loss, almost the entire team knelt on the sideline. And then they nearly knocked off the Seahawks on the road, coming within a miraculous touchdown Seattle scored with 21 seconds remaining. They didn't lose because of McNair's distraction. They lost, after a valiant effort, because Russell Wilson ran them ragged. We have a great bunch of guys in that locker room, Texans coach Bill O'Brien said. It's a very high-character locker room. The Cowboys dominated the Redskins on Sunday despite another week spent waiting to learn Elliott's fate. A court case in New York on Monday could determine whether the NFL's 6-game suspension of Elliott, stemming from a domestic violence allegation, will be reinstated. Elliott didn't fly back to Dallas with Cowboys, instead heading to New York. I really wasn't thinking about it, Elliott told reporters. I was just worried about going out there, being myself and performing at my highest level. It's not that outside events never impact NFL teams. But the reflexive labeling of any outside the norm happening as a distraction is tired. Elliott, the Cowboys and the Texans showed players can process occurrences outside the bounds of their playbooks while still performing the duties of their jobs. They only play for 3.5 hours every week, And life will probably happen in the other 165.5. Maybe McNair didn't want to distract his players. He should work on understanding them instead. The Eagles are still the NFL's hottest